Hi, everyone. It's Marilyn, Alauria, and welcome to Who Can It Be Now? We are going to be talking about sensitivities, emotions, what it's like to be a sensitive in this world, wearing your emotions like you're wearing a coat. And also, we're going to be talking about deep listening. I'm teaching deep listening right now in Next Level Living as I record this. So I'm going to give you some tips and techniques on how to deeply listen to the moon, deeply listen to the redwood tree, deeply listen to your heart, different things like that, and give you some kinds of great tools and techniques to help you out on this journey. For those of you just discovering me, I am a psychic medium, teacher, and coach. I teach people. I've been teaching people around the world for quite some time. I've been in business for about 18 years. And I help people to really discover, own, and expand their own innate gifts and use them in their life every single day. I also teach people now, especially my program, Next Level Living, is teaching people how to cultivate what they love and what they're doing and this passion inside of them and create a business, how to get out on stage and speak about it or get their book out there or get their course out there. Many people that come to me are retiring from a career, yet they have something still inside of them that they're ready to get out into the world. And they come and work with me so that they can trust what they're getting and trust their instincts and really just have confidence and grow confidence in their self as they grow their business and grow out in the world. We're going to talk a little bit about retirement today. So as always, and you may hear my dog in the background because she's moving around, and my puppy is in his crate because I was doing an interview before this and he was chewing pillows and just being all puppy shenanigans was happening. And at one point his entire penis was out. I'm like, this is not going to go well. So I was like, you need to go into the crate because I just know that's excitement, and that excitement is not going to calm down. So I want to share with you a few things that are going on in my own life, and hopefully they're going to help you to develop your gifts, trust yourself. We're going to talk about deep listening and how that helps, and really moving into a state of 10xing your life, growing your life, really living the life that you're meant to live. And I'm going to share certain rituals that I've brought into my life these days that are really helping me and really how I'm navigating my own experience at this point. I'm recording this on May 14th, 2024. And it's very interesting. It's 1:22 right now. And the last podcast, when I said the date, it was 12:22. I do date stamps for a reason. I feel that recording devices are everything's energy, right? And if I record something that I'm going through in a particular moment, but I know that it's fluid, and for some reason I have to bring the attention of the timestamp to it, because there's something inside of me on a deep conscious level that is allowing the universe to know that this is a fluid moment, and whatever I'm talking about today is going to transmute and change and grow into something else. So for me, it's kind of like an understanding, and I did a whole class on time and Next Level Living and how to play with time. But for me, it's an understanding inside of me that everything is fluid and nothing stays the same. So if you just don't, you'll hear on my podcast, I sometimes will say I'm recording this on such and such a date. And there's the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm acknowledging that this is my consciousness at this moment in time, which will shift and expand and grow every second that I am talking and being and growing and having wisdom. I'm going to digress a second. I actually did a paper in college about time. And as I was writing the paper, I was like writing about how time affects us, and things are always changing and things are always shifting. And what is time? And I was like, oop, there goes another second. Time's already changed and things are already changed. And it's just very fascinating if you play with time in a very productive, conscious way and not an overly worried way, and you allow time to work with you and you recognize that it's not linear, it's just energy, it becomes a whole other experience. So anyway, I digressed for a second, but I always trust that my digressions are what's needed in the moment. So I'm recording this 2 days after Mother's Day, and this is my first Mother's Day without my mother. And I'm going to tell you that it was very difficult. I didn't recognize that I was so raw and upset about it. The only thing I recognized was that I was having pretty much meltdowns to some degree, like emotional experiences. And it started on Thursday before Mother's Day. I went out to play tennis and practice with a couple of people on my tennis team. And there's different lines in tennis. There's D1, D2, and D3. And D3 is usually, D1 is usually the more advanced players, and D3 is usually the not so advanced players. In USTA, a lot of times I'm in a D2 sometimes D1 because I'm usually more, I'm a really good player. Lately, I'm like a D3 player, and that's okay. It is what it is because my mental state is not on with the game. So I know where I'm at. I know my game. I'm not one of these players that comes on the court and not anymore anyway. I've really learned a lot about tennis. I used to be really like, I can do this, and not anymore. I'm like, I know my faults, I know my downfalls, and I know my expertise, and I know what I'm on and I know what I'm not on. Tennis really teaches you a lot about your mental state. I think sports do, period. So anyway, I went on the court and I was playing with this woman who we've only played together, I think, once before, not in USTA. And I would say we're not a good match. Let's just say that. And we were playing and we weren't playing well together. And I had my dog Venus with me and I went off the court for a second because I wanted to let her go outside and play in the park. And she's really, really good. And it's a very safe park. It's not like free for all run out in the street and everything. And I saw the three other women talking. And I was like, they're talking about me. I know they're talking about me. And so I came back onto the court and I said, what are you talking about? And the woman I was playing with, she's like, well, we're talking about the lineups. We don't really understand the lineups. And I'm like, yeah, she doesn't understand the lineups because she's with me in D1 and she doesn't want to be with me. So I was like, I don't understand the lineups either. I don't know why I was moved out of D3 and I don't understand what it is. I don't understand the D2s, the whatever, it doesn't matter. But I said, it's none of my business. I'm not the captain. If you want to change the lineups, go right ahead. I'm not a D1 player right now. I don't care. Do what you have to do. And so the other woman that I was supposed to be playing with, she's like, let's you and I play together and see how it goes. And I was feeling like crap at that point. I'm like, they're just talking about my game. I feel like shit right now as it is. I'm feeling really insecure. So I played worse, and the other girl was making errors. Plus the girl I was playing with in D1, the first girl who started saying something, she was making a lot of errors. She was making so many errors that she was like, oh, it's my tennis racket. It's this, it's that. No, you're making errors. Like, just friggin' admit it. So we didn't play well together. So then the first girl and I, who were playing D1 together, we got back together and we did well. It was 4-4 and I had to go. I had to go pick up my dog. I felt like shit. I felt really bad. And it was like grammar school. I wasn't like this in high school. My high school friends were women that had your back. They didn't, there was some of those shenanigans that went on every now and then, but the majority of my high school experience was very strong women supporting each other. So I left the court and I was just feeling really bad and not recognizing like Mother's Day is right around the corner, right? So I'm just feeling bad. And I go to pick up my puppy at daycare and there's an older woman looking to pull out, like her car is positioned to pull out into the street and it's a very heavy traffic street. And she's just looking down. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. This is a really busy parking lot. Why is she was an older woman. I'm like, why is she doing that? And I'm like, that's kind of weird. And I went inside. I was like thinking it was a little selfish, actually. I'm like, that's kind of not a great place to be, but whatever. So I went in and I got my dog and I came back outside and this couple was trying to talk to her. And I put my dog in the car and I realized something was wrong. And I said, what's going on? And I went over to the car and she was completely unresponsive. And I started talking to her through the window. And I have this healing technique that comes up inside of me. Many of you may recognize this in yourselves, where if somebody is in physical trouble, there's a healer inside of me that just takes over. And it's not something I would choose to do for an everyday thing, but it's something that I've noticed that's come out quite a few times. So I was like trying to talk to her through the car and she was not responding at all. And I knew she was alive. I could feel that in my being. And I said to the couple, go inside and get them. They need to come out here and help us. And I was like, just open the door. Just please wake up, open the door, open the door. I just want to help you. I want to help you. And I was like begging her through the window and she started fluttering her eyes a bit. And the guy next to me, the couple, they came back out and the dog people came out and the guy was like, she's awake. And she went to reach for the lever of the door and couldn't open it. And I was like, I just want to help you. Because I didn't know if she didn't trust me or what was going on, but she was not conscious really. And I was like, I just wanted to get in there to talk to her, to help her. And so they called 911 and the people who run the dog facility was like, you should go because the emergency vehicles are going to need to get in. And I completely agreed with her. And as I got into my car, the woman looked up and looked right at me. And I mouthed to her, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. This has happened to me before where there was a kid who got beat up and I came at the end of it. If I saw that, I'm glad I didn't see that. And he was all bloody and a wreck. and my neighbors were helping him. It's where I lived in LA, and they put him in the car, and that's when he finally saw his face, and he looked right at me, and I mouthed, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And I did it once in an emergency room with a woman, and she was the one who actually said to me, you have this thing that you can help people, you calm people down. So just that's a side note, right? And I say these things not because look at me, look at me. I say these things because I want you to recognize them in yourself, because I'm sure many of you were like, oh my goodness, I do that. That's a gift. Gifts are vast like the ocean. There's so many gifts out there. It's not something I choose to do. I'm not a hands-on healer. I don't want to be. I have it in my hands. It's not for me. So I drove away, and you can only imagine my mental state, right? Not putting together my mom fully. Of course, I know that I'm sad about it, but I'm not putting it together. And I went home, and I was so sad. Oh, I actually called a friend, a tennis friend, and we talked about it a bit, about what went on in the tennis court. And then I went home, and I couldn't even eat. And I texted another tennis friend partner, and she was like, I'm not going to say what she said because I don't know who listens to my podcast. And because she said something that was helpful to me, I don't want to bring her into the story just in case people may, I doubt people really listen to this, but sometimes people listen to this. I find out neighbors listen and things like that, and you don't know. And I don't want to put a private conversation, but basically she said something that made me feel better because it wasn't about me. And I knew it wasn't about me. I knew that this MO, this behavior happens with these particular people. Look, I'm not innocent either. I think I'm better now. I've had people come up to me on the tennis court, especially some of the older gentlemen I play with, and thank me for always making them feel good. I'm much more conscious now of making my partner feel better. I wasn't always like that. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So the next day, it really wrecked me for some strange reason. It emotionally so upset me. And I feel like part of the problem is I'm not speaking to my brothers still. I'm very disconnected here because I don't relate to a lot of people here. I've said this many times. That is very unusual in my life. I have friends from every aspect of my life, every aspect of my life. I have some friends here, but it's not the same experience I've always had. And you may be wondering, well, why is that happening? I think of this Wayne Dyer story all the time, how he talks about he was walking on a beach. And I don't know if this was him or a parable or what it was, but he said a woman came up to him and said, what is it like living here? And Wayne said to her, well, what's it like? What are the people like living here? What are the people like here? Because I'm thinking of moving here. And he said, well, what are the people like where you live? And the woman's like, oh, they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. And Wayne said, well, they're horrible here too. And then another woman came up to him and said, what are the people like here? Because I'm thinking about moving here. And he said, well, what are the people like where you live? And she said, oh, they're amazing. They're so nice. They're so good. And he said, well, they're great here. And you could say like that to me, but not going to agree with it. Not going to agree with it because I never came here with any other intention of making solid friendships, right? I don't want to get off track. So, and I'm not the only one that has this experience. Anyway, moving along. And it's not everybody. Moving the story along. So Friday, I was really kind of wrecked in a way. And it was weird. It was a weird experience for me to be that emotionally upset. And I went to meet my neighbor. One of my neighbors invited me over with the puppy because the puppy and his dog get along, and they played. I also went to the horse farm to get Venus therapy, and Shiloh and I walked around. He was really good with the horses. So I did a bunch of things on Friday. And then Friday afternoon, I went and played tennis. I'm trying to remember who I played with, and I can't even remember right now. But oh, I know. I went to the club that I'm at and had a nice tennis game, and it was fine. We had fun. It was really nice. And then I came home that night, and the next morning I meditated, and I was like, I really probably should not play with this person in D1 because we're not going to have a good match together. It's just not a good matchup. She doesn't want to play with me. She made it so obvious. And whether she agrees with that statement or not, that's the way I felt. And shortly after that, I get a text from my captain saying, I heard you don't want to play D1. Never said that. And well, I said it to them, but check with me. That's not the reason why this person's asking not to play with me. So I'm taking blah, blah, blah away from you, away from you and putting her in D1. And I was like, that's not what happened at all. Blah, blah, blah doesn't want to play with me. And that's what's going on. I said, yeah, sure. I don't want to play D1 because I knew she didn't want to play with me. And I didn't really necessarily want to play D1, but that wasn't the truth. Tell the truth. So the captain was great about it. And I also said to her, look, then it started striking me. Oh, because something happened on Friday. I started realizing it was Mother's Day. So Friday I was in the grocery store, and Mother's Day paraphernalia was everywhere. And that's where it hit me. I went, oh, it's Mother's Day. And I was walking over really depressed and sad. And this guy in front of me online started talking to me. We were talking to each other. And I said, oh, what are you doing this weekend? And I wasn't making the connection about Mother's Day. I just wasn't. And he said, oh, I'm going to see my mother. She's 89 and she's doing great. And it's her birthday in July. And I'm like, well, why are you going to see her now? I still wasn't making the connection of Mother's Day. And he was like, and I'm really excited to see her. It's great. She's doing so amazing. And I literally wanted to sit down and just cry in the middle of the aisle. And right before he left, he said, Happy Mother's Day. And that's when it struck me. I went, oh, it's Mother's Day. And so I paid for my food, and then I forgot something, and I went back to the aisle to get it. And this woman in a cart with roses almost ran right into me. And she was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to run into you. And I was like, oh, it's my mother, because roses represent my mother for me. And so I realized like a lot of what went on Thursday was that it was Mother's Day, and I was sad. And it was my first Mother's Day without my mother. And I'm still really raw, so I'm going to be careful of how I tell the story, because I don't want to be a bubbling idiot on this podcast. And so I think that was Friday. And I think Friday night is when I texted with my coach, because the game was Saturday. And I told her what was going on so that she knew. I said, I'm emotionally not really stable right now, and this is what's happening. And she was so sweet about it. And I said, I'll play with whoever. I really don't care. It's totally fine. And I said that way before, too, when she told me she was switching. And then Saturday morning, I got up and played with this really fun group that I play with. And then Saturday afternoon, we had the match, and I ran into the two women. Oh, I texted them too. I texted all three of the women. One of them's my friend, so I texted her separately, and we had a conversation. But I texted all three of them, and I told them how I felt. That is so unusual for me, because normally my MO was F you. You're going to treat me this way, F you. And I learned from the last therapist I was with to communicate more about my feelings. So I texted them a very nice text. I didn't blame them for anything. I said, this is how I felt. It really hurt my feelings. It is so unusual for me to say that to people. And they were all very nice about it. They were the one girl was apologetic. They said that really wasn't what was happening. We can disagree to agree. We can agree to disagree. It doesn't matter. They were super nice about it. I appreciated how responsive they were. And as soon as I got to the courts, I ran into smack dab into them in the parking lot. And I thanked them again for responding so well, because they did the right thing. And we went on, and all three of the lines lost. I choked in the tie break. And I wouldn't say the whole thing was my fault, but anyway, they were watching and everything. And then I left Saturday, and it was Shiloh's first night away from home, because he was being tested at the boarding facility. I was exhausted from playing like 3.5 hours of tennis on a really hot day. And I came home Saturday night and just had a nice peaceful night with Venus, and it was good. And then Sunday on Mother's Day, I was heading to the beach where I'm training Shiloh. So I had to pick Shiloh up. He passed. I was like, yay, he passed to the particular boarding facility. So I can now like put him in there when I want to travel and stuff. And this boarding facility, I'm very picky, very, very picky. And they're amazing. They're very good. They're very great with the dogs. I work with the trainer out of that boarding facility. So I work with the trainers in that boarding facility. So you get what I'm doing. So I went to the beach, and I was really sad. It was Mother's Day. And I took Shiloh out onto the out into the ocean, out into the beach. And there's a lot going on. It's in San Francisco. It's super busy. He did incredibly well, because I have a little reactivity with him that I'm working on. He's doing amazing. And he has a friend in the class. They're like just buddies. And I get along with the dad of the puppy, and they play really well together. And the father was saying to me, his wife, she wants me to get your number so you guys can do a play date and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'd love that. That'd be great. I met his wife once and was talking with her. And as I was walking to the parking lot, his wife was there, and she came out, and we started talking, and man, we connected. Like we were talking about how difficult it was in the beginning. She was like, oh my goodness. Like, I really don't want to tell these people's stories, but I think it's fine. It's like, she was like, I was questioning this. And I was like, me too. And I said, my mom passed away, and then I got a puppy. And she was like, oh, oh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, yeah, I was having like existential moments with this dog. And their dog's so behaved. Like they're doing such incredible training. And I loved like that she said she had existential moments. And I was like, I totally get it. And so we exchanged numbers and everything. And I went and I was like, that was so nice. Like I had such a great conversation with her. It was so wonderful. And I connected with her. And then I went to the tennis courts where my coach was had lessons, because the last time I took Shiloh to the tennis court, which was the week before, I wanted to see how Shiloh would do on the tennis court, not thinking puppy tennis balls. I don't know why, because Venus is so behaved. I'm like, oh, everybody's going to be like Venus. She just lays there, watches the balls. She doesn't go after them. Well, Shiloh was a friggin' nightmare, running around the fence, barking at everybody, grabbing all the balls. He's teething. There's blood all over the balls. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm like picking up all the balls and there's just blood on every single one of them. I gave him extra money and he was like, no, no. And I was like, no, please buy another case. I can't believe it. So I brought Shiloh on Sunday to the tennis court to stand outside to get him used to it, get him used to the park, get him used to, there's a lot of dogs off leash at that park. Get him used to, he's not off leash yet, get him used to the balls and everything. And Shiloh did amazing, absolutely amazing. And then I came home and just had my day. And then that night I took Venus and Shiloh to, we have beautiful places here. And this is beautiful school right near my neighborhood. And I walk on it along a creek and everything. And anybody can go on the grounds here. It's kind of incredible. And so I went on the grounds and all these people came over to meet Shiloh and Venus was with me. And usually I'm very careful with her because she's shy. I'm always careful with her. But so it's kind of hard to navigate the puppy with Venus. Like I kind of keep that really, I'm very careful about it. But the people all over Shiloh, and the couple of people that wanted to talk to Venus, I just give them directions on how to do it. And Shiloh did it amazing. Like he's really exhibiting this incredible behavior because I want him to be a therapy dog for probably first responders. I have to call the company and see what they need. So it ended up being a really nice day. It ended up being a beautiful day. And I recognized that I was having emotional meltdowns, that maybe what went on the tennis court wasn't, well, I'm very intuitive and psychic, so I know what I know, but I also don't know that. I also think that there were some other things that went on while they were trying to switch the lines and stuff. So the reason why I share all of this is because of the sensitivities. And I don't know that you have to have what's going on in my life in order to have these sensitivities right now. And when you're a psychic and you're an intuitive, our sensitivities are much higher than a lot of people out there. So these women, like when I saw them, they were totally fine to me. So this is nothing about them. When I saw them at the game, they were like trying to be positive and like, like, good job, Marilyn. I'm like, just shut up now. Like, I'm just like, just shut up. And it wasn't really nothing against them. It's totally not about them. This is about me. They handled the situation beautifully. So I want to say that. But it was so vulnerable for me. And I'm like, and I didn't tell them what was going on. Matter of fact, on the court, when the whole conversation was happening on Thursday, I said, guys, I'm going through something emotional. I can't handle this right now. You decide what you want to do. Because I just couldn't take the conversation. And I knew it was all about me, not whatever it was. So the reason why I share this is because so many people aren't in touch with their emotions. They just aren't. They would see an older lady in a car passed out. And it's fascinating who I told that to, the couple of people. And the response, like one person, one of my partners, she's so sensitive like I am. She was like, oh my goodness. Whereas another one was like, wow, and it's nothing against the person. It's how we operate in life. So how do you accept yourself as an emotional being as you walk through this life? And it's bringing up so much to me because in my life, I was never allowed to have my feelings. I was never really acknowledged for my feelings, I was always told there was something wrong with me. And none of those people are in my life. I'm not talking to my family. So I don't really talk to friends that I don't have friends that don't acknowledge my feelings. I mean, good friends, right? So that's not true. I have a couple. So how do we navigate this experience and not make ourselves wrong for it? So it took me 24 minutes to finally get to that friggin' thing, that hook. I'm not good at giving hooks in the beginning because I never know what I'm going to say until I say it. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge your emotions, but that's where these tools and techniques are really important. So, the tools and techniques, the deep listening, is really deeply listening to yourself, listening to how you feel, not dishonoring it. I knew while I was navigating that Thursday through that Sunday that there was something up inside of me. I wasn't aware of it until that guy said Happy Mother's Day, even though there's paraphernalia everywhere and it's registering somewhere. But I'm like just in my emotions, which is so unusual for me to not be conscious of what the feelings were. And I knew deep listening to myself, even as I was talking to the captain, I knew there was something off. But I also knew I needed to acknowledge how I felt. And I also knew that I was no longer willing to not acknowledge how I felt. That's why I sent the text to all of them. And I didn't want to bring it up at the game. So that's why I sent it via text. And I said that via text. You have to do the deep listening and ask yourself, like, what is going on here? And I didn't react. I didn't call them a bitch. I didn't like, if that had happened before in a court, and trust me, times that I was like, F you, I'm out of here. You can all go to hell. I didn't do any of that. I knew like I was riding this wave of emotions and watching myself ride it. And it was super uncomfortable. But I was acknowledging how I felt and being with myself during it. So that's deep listening. Deep listening is listening to what you're going through as you go through it and acknowledging yourself for it and being there for yourself while you're going through it. So I wanted to share that with you because I think a lot of us, I've talked about this in my Next Level Living community, that we're going through a lot of more sensitivities because our gifts are opening up, our gifts are expanding, our consciousness is expanding. Your gifts expand when your consciousness expands. And as you become more conscious, that's why I always say to everybody, I teach people, you're the instrument. You can go out there and study clairvoyancy 20 different ways. But if you're not aware of how you see, what your consciousness is around it, what your belief system is around it, you're going to struggle with seeing because the way you see may be completely different than the way I see. And you have to acknowledge your instrument and how you see. So it's so important to be deeply listening to your own self, your own being, who you are. And as you go through that, you have to learn your instrument. And we're going through a time right now. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to say a majority of you are going through this. I don't think you'd be listening to this podcast if you weren't, because I think a lot of you would be turning me off and just being like, oh my goodness, can you get to the point already? Or she's boring the heck out of me, or I don't know what she's talking about. I've heard that before from people. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I can't sit here and explain it any better than I am. It's either you get it or you don't. And it might not be your way. I don't think my way is the highway. So notice if you're being more sensitive and don't make yourself wrong for it. It means that you're opening up. It means you're expanding. It means you're growing. It means you're growing your gifts. It means you're growing your intuition. It means you're growing your way. Now, navigating it is when you need the tools and the techniques. So I'm going to share one more story and then I'm going to talk about deep listening. I had an experience today, even with my business, and it really disturbed me. And it disturbed me in a way that I know that like my whole inner being is being shifted. I know I'm in a big experience right now of shifts and changes, and I'm calling it in because something can be said that to most people would be like, yeah, that's all right, you know? But to me, it's like this volcano was going off inside of my being. And I'm feeling it so deeply. And I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it. I'm like, why is this bothering me? What that person said, why is it bothering me? And many times I know that the intention in which it was said with, there's two things it could be. The intention in which it was said with, if I'm being that disturbed by something that was said to me, there is usually an intention behind it. I don't think that people consciously do it, but there's usually an intention that I'm picking up that is also disturbing. Okay. So what do I mean by that? And this is a very tricky place to be. I'd have to do an entire like month-long lesson on intentions, because people can be in their psychoses, their psychological breakdowns, their psychological confusion, and think that somebody is thinking something about them, and it may not be necessarily true because they don't know how to clear the path to get to the truth. It's a whole other conversation. So what I'm trying to say is that I can listen to someone and I can feel the intention behind it. I can separate my disruption from it, and I can see where it's coming from and the truth it's coming from. And I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. We see people cannot be around me if they're not living in their truth. It's just so true. You cannot be my friend if you're not in your truth. It's impossible. So some people it's not an egotistical statement. I don't know how to explain this. So I can read people really well, really well. Do I choose to ignore it sometimes? Completely. I have to. I have to. My assistant was asking me the other day, like, do you know and things? And I was like, I do, but I don't tell people I know it. And sometimes I just have to let it go because it is what it is at the moment. But most people I find that are in relationship with me can't be in relationship with me if they're not in the truth, if they're in a lie, if they're living a lie. So where does this bring me into sensitivities? So you have to know how you feel, right? You first have to know how you feel when you're interacting with people. And you need tools to be able to listen to that. And deep listening to your own heart and soul is very important. How do you do that? I do it with journaling. I do it with walking in nature. I do it with talking out loud into a recorder and recording it and then listening back sometimes. I'll do that with Voxer. My beautiful friend Shantini, who I don't think she'll mind me saying that, she said that WhatsApp allows you to do it. I haven't figured out how to do it on WhatsApp. So there's different ways you can do that. And sometimes speaking things out loud, especially if you're a verbal processor, and then listening back helps you to hear something in your own voice that you're not necessarily hearing. Now let's talk about deep listening in the world. So this is the lesson I taught Next Level Living, not what I just told you about. I didn't teach any of that Next Level Living. Didn't need to teach that. We talked about deep listening in the universe. We deep listen to the center of the earth. I can't even remember because I channel my lessons. We deep listen to the moon. We just deep listened to a star in the Milky Way. We went outside the Milky Way and deep listened. Deep listening is listening with your heart and soul. And I believe what I did is I connected them with their heart and soul and listening, and then had their heart and soul listen to something. So I had them listen with their heart, leaning their heart against something. I had them listen with their hands. So play with this, because everything wants to communicate something to us. And what it could be is a deep reflection of our truth. To me, I've been working with my guides since I was 40. I'm 58, right? Since about 39. I think it was actually 39. I started working with them, and I started working in this field about 40 years old. So it's over 18 years. I don't think it was until 5 to 7 years in that they told me they were a reflection of my deepest truth, my highest self, my truth. So they're literally reflecting back to me the highest alignment. Now I knew that right off the bat when I called them in, that I wanted to speak to my guides from the highest light and highest alignment with me. That's how I invited them in. But it wasn't until, and I thought they were just these beings, right, that I was communicating with. And it wasn't for a while until I started holding up mirrors that they were reflecting back my deepest truth, my highest truth. So if you're listening to, say you put your ear up to the moon and you want to hear what the moon says, you have to use your imagination if you work with me. Magic is in creativity and in imagination. We're all creative beings. And if you put your ear up, let's everybody do it right now. Just put your ear up to the moon. What is she saying to you? And say you can't hear anything. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? What color is it? If you can't hear or feel it, what color is that message? If you were to draw that message, how would you draw it? If you were to think of it as a piece of material, whether it was a leaf, water, sand, cotton. If it had some type of texture to it, what texture would it have? If that message that's coming from the moon had a smell, what kind of smell would it have? So there's so many ways that you can deeply listen without even using hearing. And you would be deeply listening to the messages of the moon. And this is where I talk about turning on your instrument. I have just now given you 5 ways, 6 ways, I don't know how many I said, that have helped you to communicate with energy and to get messages for yourself. So if the moon, go back to the moon, think of something that you have a question about. See if she answers it. And if she doesn't answer it, if you can't hear, because that's not a gift that you're developing, really what's getting in your way is mind chatter. Usually I always tell my students, use your imagination. What do you think she's saying to you? What does she want you to know about this situation? Even if you're guessing, what does she want you to know? How does she want you to feel about this situation? How does she want you to feel about it? Where does she want you to feel that information inside your physical body? Where does she want you to feel that physical information inside your body? Where does she want you to feel that information inside your physical body? Why? Now I want you to breathe with the moon and feel all that love, that energy, whatever you are feeling. And just let it be. So when you're doing this type of work, whether you had an experience or not, the intention is all that matters. If you intend to do the work, it's going to get in. The messages are going to get in. And how it gets in and how it works is when the intention is there of like, I'm just going to try this. Even if you're struggling, say, I'm struggling, but if you always have like, but I'm still going to try it. I'm going to trust it. I'm going to try to trust it. I'm going to trust it. And then you go out in your day, you want to pay attention to all the signs and the symbols that are around you, because you may find somebody says something to you like, have you read such and such? And then somebody else comes to you, have you read such and such? And you're like, well, that's 2 times I've heard about that book. And then you hear it a 3rd time, that's big time. You go look up that book, and all of a sudden the information's in that book. It's answering your question. Or maybe it's a song that you start hearing in your head. Or maybe you start hearing the birds singing. And you're like, that feels really good. Just pay attention. Pay attention to the signs. I have a class called The Symbolic Language of My Soul, of Your Soul, on my website. If you want to check it out, go to marilynalauria.com classes. And it's my little puppy barking, but I don't know if the microphone is picking it up. And it's called The Symbolic Language of, it's called Symbols Class. It's called Symbols Class. It teaches the symbolic language of your soul. And you can go check it out at marilynalauria.com/classes. And it'll really teach you how to understand symbols in your life. So I'm going to talk one last thing about retirement, and then I'm going to have to go. So it's very interesting to me how I'm at an age where people are talking about retirement around me. And when I first heard it from a friend, I was like, retirement? It kind of like threw me. I'm like, retirement? We're talking about retirement? Why? And then, these people are in the kinds of careers where they're looking to retire. They also don't like what they're doing anymore. So they're happy to retire, right? They're ready to retire. And I don't think there's anything wrong with retirement. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I noticed that there was a belief system around me because I started hearing it more. And, this is what I'm going to do in retirement, and I'm working with a lot of retired people in Next Level Living, but they're looking to create their legacy, their mission. They loved what they did. Some of them or just done with what they were doing, but through their work, they've learned something about themselves, another gift they've discovered. Now they're ready to put it out in the world, whether it's through a book or speaking on stage or teaching a class or coaching or doing readings. So I work with a lot of people that are in careers that are leaving one career and going to another career, developing a career. And, but I was thinking about this retirement thing, and I was like, am I supposed to be thinking about retirement? And actually, the therapist before my last therapist, she's like, why are you thinking about retirement? I'm like, I don't know, because everybody's talking about it. Am I supposed to be like worried about it, thinking about it? She's like, why? And it's interesting. I'm going back to that therapist because she always asked, they were both great therapists. I'm having past two therapists I've had. But she always asked really good questions. And I need those questions right now from somebody else. I need a reflection. So I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, why? I love what I do. Yes, I'm always shifting my business and growing it and changing it and adding. Actually, I have more freedom in my life than I had before, so that I could do more of what I love to do. And I'm getting really active on social media and just creating more content. And I'm creating content Next Level Living. And like I sat down to write this deep listening class, and I can't remember what I titled it because I'm always channeling and I never remember what I'm titling things. But it's about deep listening with your heart and soul. That's what it's called, deep listening with your heart and soul. And I sat down to write that syllabus and I got completely lost in it. And I was like, oh, this was fun when I came out of it. Like, it was great. And then I taught it and they loved it. And that's what I want to do more of, doing more of that type of deep, deep teaching, because it's coming through me. It's not me. And so I've been playing around with this and thinking about it and thinking about the consciousness out there around it. And then I saw one of my dog trainers that I've studied with write this post. And I'm going to read this post that he wrote. And he's older than me. I think he was in the military, and now he's a behaviorist with dogs, and he's really brilliant when it comes to dogs. And he wrote, "It took me my whole life to become this skilled, knowledgeable, capable, getting it, and able to handle anything thrown at me. Why on God's green earth would I now want to retire? Idiots. Stop telling everyone to stop being productive when you should be at your most valuable to others. Modern society is backwards." And I read that and I was like, oh, I get it. I like it. Thank you so much. And of course, we have all different belief systems, right? And that's something I also teach. Just because my belief system is I'm growing with my business and my business is growing with me. And yes, I'm adding more free time to my business, but I'm also, with the time that I have, the quality of work that I'm doing is different. I'm working with a different style of person and things like that. And then other people that I know are just like looking to retire and they just want to retire. I have a good friend that's retiring this year, and she's traveling and doing all sorts of stuff. And I think that's great. But retirement in the sense of, if there's a passion still in you, live that passion. You don't have to give it up. And I thought what I loved about this was it invited in a new perspective. It invited in somebody I respect who's older than me. And I went, yep, that's it. That's it. So I wanted to bring that in right now because it's all about belief systems. And everything that I share on my podcast, in Next Level Living, in any of my courses, I always come from the space of, this is what I know to be true right now. You get to decide if it's true or not. You get to decide what your beliefs are. You get to decide if this is the thing that is going to help you to live the best life that you live. It's not what I believe. So I'm reading a really great book right now, listening to a really great book right now that's really shifting a lot of things in me and changing my rituals. And I'll share one ritual that I'm doing. And as I'm listening to the book, and I'm like, aha, yeah, I agree. And then I'm like, this is just somebody else sharing their beliefs. But I'm deciding that these beliefs are for me. Because I could go to another book that's completely opposite of it. Because one of the things they're sharing is a time management thing. And I agree with it to a degree. And then some of it I don't. And I'm like, well, just because they say it doesn't mean I have to agree with it all. But there's many concepts in the book that I love. So go around your life just being open to beliefs. Decide what retirement is to you. Play with that word. What's retirement? What are you looking to retire to? And then the one ritual that I would suggest to all of you is listen to something educational, spiritual. You can listen to this podcast, something that really helps shift your thinking or being, for 30 minutes a day. You can read too, I don't care, but at least for 30 minutes and your life will change. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. and share this podcast. I really want to get it out to more people. And as always, who can it be now? It's you. It's always you. Thank you so much for listening.